Boy, am I happy I found this movie. Boy, am I happy that I found this movie. It has been a chore trying to find a movie to review this week. It really has. Even with, one of my mission statements, and I've mentioned this before for this channel when I first started it, was that I was going to look at movies that not everybody else looked at. I was going to look at the smaller movies, the quieter movies, the things that don't get all of the publicity. And I'm very proud of that. But sometimes it means you really got to dig. You really got to dig deep to try to find something to look at. And man, just looking at my options this past week, it was not easy. And then I found this film. The trailer popped up for me yesterday, pulled it up, and I was like, oh, thank God I have something to talk about. Because this movie does give me some things to talk about. Though this is the third, I think, romantic comedy I've done so far this year. And when I tell you about it, you are probably going to notice some eerie similarities, excuse me, to the last romantic comedy that I did. And I couldn't help but notice that too. There are some there are more than a few similarities going on there, but let's get into this. Let's talk about this. So what is this about? So Tom Malloy and Briana Evigan play Jack and Jill. Yes, they really went with that naming convention. They are two dance enthusiasts who are both looking for love and can never quite find it. The movie goes to great lengths to prove to us that these two are star-crossed lovers whom destiny has decided need to be together. So again, very much in that same vein as About Fate. Only this one really double, triple, quadruples down on it. They are constantly in the same location and just right across from each other. They catch glimpses of one another. They are always just barely missing each other, one leaving or one coming in at the same time. They know the same people in a 6 degrees of separation type of way who are constantly trying to set them up, and it never quite works out. They always miss each other. So it's, one of those films. And this film really, again, pushes that destiny envelope. As our film opens, both are walking home from a dance club, and I can't believe this is a sentence I am about to say, but I am going to say it because there's no other way to describe it. And an old gypsy woman, seriously, comes up to both of them in turn and says, you will find the love of your life on the last day of the year. So it is, we're 4 days till New Year's when Briana Evigan's friend is getting married. So again, very much in that same vein as About Fate, to, unbeknownst to them, one of Tom Malloy's friends. So both of them hear this old gypsy woman, again, cannot believe I am saying that, and immediately believe that it is true. And so they start off on this endless parade of horrific Seinfeldian-esque blind dates, trying to find the love of their life, when of course it is meant to be each other. And it's a romantic comedy, so you can probably guess how it ends. I don't think I'm spoiling anything when I say they finally run into each other at the wedding, love at first sight, and everything ends happily. So I know that from my tone, I sound very cynical about the storyline, but really I don't. It didn't bother me. The destiny, the thing of these two ships that pass in the night, that didn't bother me. It's a romantic comedy, and I said the same thing about Fate, that you just kind of have to accept that it's part of the shtick. The only thing that did kind of bother me is just like how much of About Fate this film kind of had in it. It's kind of like, a few years ago, I guess it was longer than that, when both Armageddon and Deep Impact came out at the same time. It's like, look at that. Or A Bug's Life and Ants. it's just one of those things you're like, this is a little weird that both these movies with so many common conventions happened at the same time. Just, you know, little weird there. But anyway, I don't mind that. I don't mind the over-reliance on Destiny as a storytelling tool in a situation like this, because again, it's a romantic comedy. You kind of have to accept that as part of the deal. And I also don't mind it if the characters that I am following are still good and they're people I actually want to spend the hour and a half with, and I want to actually see them succeed. And in this case, that is true. Tom Malloy and Briana Evigan do a really good job of creating two very likable, very realistic characters. I think that's one of the things I really did enjoy about this movie in terms of its leads, is that they both seem like people you would meet. And I think I have to give the MVP of this one to Briana Evigan, who is a just incredibly charming screen presence. Very natural. She has a lot of charisma, but it's not like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson charisma that's like right in your face. It's understated. It's radiant. And again, she feels like a real human being. He does too. Tom Malloy does an excellent job in this, and I have to give him a little extra credit because he's also the director and writer. And it's very easy. We've seen it before this past year for the writer director to give himself the premium role and kind of make himself out to be, you know, the best ever or what have you. But I think he avoids that trap. The only thing I'll say is that a lot of people do talk about how hot he is. And he's not a bad looking guy, but it's one of those things where when you know someone wrote the screenplay, maybe it's just because I'm such a negative person that if I was writing the screenplay that I was starring in, everybody would be like, oh, God, you're awful. But, you know, kind of like, okay, here's a good example. Seth MacFarlane, when he wrote and directed and starred in A Million Ways to Die in the West, you know, everybody in that movie was like, oh, but you're such a great guy. You're so funny and wonderful. It's like, you see what I'm getting at. But Tom Malloy avoids a lot of those pitfalls and does present himself as a very natural kind of guy, a John Everyman or Joe Everyman, as you, whichever way you want to take it. And when they finally do connect, there is a wonderful chemistry there. Again, they converse and interact with each other as I would imagine real people would. And even with it being kind of a love at first sight kind of deal, they present themselves as people you could see being together. It doesn't feel out of place. You know, as much as people may enjoy the film Sleepless in Seattle, you know, when Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan finally get together at the end, I was like, are these two going to last? They know nothing about each other. There's like no, you know, we can't even tell if there's chemistry. And here you can definitely see these two, falling in love right away and staying together. So I appreciate that. And that takes a lot of talent in the writing, the directing, and the acting of both characters. So they do an incredibly nice job. You know, another thing that was very natural in this film was the dancing. Of course, the film is called Ask Me to Dance, and both characters are dance enthusiasts. They love going dancing. They're constantly looking for dance partners, and part of the way they illustrate that, you know, whatever date they're on is not right for them is how they respond to the dancing. Do you want to dance? No. Or, you know, someone else wants to lead, or they're dancing all weird or whatever. So you would think that a film with such a heavy emphasis on the dancing would have kind of over choreographed dance bits, and they don't. the dancing in this, again, feels like something that people would do, especially people like this who have some training. Tom Mallory's character is a former ballroom dancer who's done competitions and stuff. So these look like the kind of dances that someone with training would do on the spur of the moment. The very last dance, which is very beautiful, it's a wonderful way to cap off the movie, is a little bit choreographed. You can tell it's in certain spots. You're like, okay, how did she know he was going to pick her up right there? But it's not like the end of, Dirty Dancing, which is really, really choreographed. But I know it's supposed to be. I get it. I'm just using that as an example. This one feels real to me. So I really give them a lot of credit. I also say that some of the blind dates and some of the things that happened to them in the interim days are pretty interesting and funny, especially the way certain dates start out seeming normal and then, suddenly turn on a dime. But they do kind of trend into the Seinfeldian era there. For those who remember that show, I mean, that's essentially what all of Seinfeld was, George, Jerry, and Elaine going on dates and then coming back and going, well, I liked her, but, she had a weird laugh. She had a donkey laugh. She had a donkey laugh, Jerry? Yes, she had a donkey laugh. Well, you can't date someone with a donkey laugh. You need someone with a hyena laugh. Well, that's right. How can I be with someone with a donkey laugh? That kind of thing. And you do kind of get, oh no, she laughs weird. How dare she? But they then kind of segue into, oh wait, she's actually kind of crazy. So those aren't bad. I don't think they're as entertaining as they could have been, but they weren't bad. And some of them were just downright cringeworthy, especially the ones they made Briana Evigan go on. So the film generally is pretty cute and entertaining, and our two leads are endearing and natural enough that you don't mind spending time with them. So why then am I not as gung-ho about this movie as I am for, say, About Fate? Well, the biggest issue I have with this movie is that, and I mentioned this again with About Fate, but I'll talk about this here in a second, is that it has a real over-reliance on the romantic comedy genre stock character. I've talked about this before, so you're not, again, these films are very similar, so the reviews are kind of similar, but you didn't click on the wrong review. This one, though, it feels more egregious. So for clarity's sake, I've mentioned this before, but when we talk about stock characters, the reason stock characters exist is so audiences immediately know who a character is and what their role in the film or play is without having a long explanation being necessary. You see this person, you know their role, and you know, right? And this film really, really plays those up. You have Mario Cantone, best known for his role in Sex and the City as the gay best friend. Tom Mallory's best friend is a guy who thinks that all relationships are about sex. Briana Evigan's best friend who's getting married is a snarky person who thinks she's happy in her marriage, but she's not. The guy she's marrying, a college friend of Tom Mallory's, is so stupid that you wonder how he has been able to exist up to this point, how he has managed to eke out a living or feed himself. Like, they are textbook romantic comedy stock characters. And I want to stress, and again, I've said this before, stock characters are not a bad thing. It's what you do with them. But the problem you have when you employ stock characters is if you employ them to such a degree as this film does, the film begins to feel like a relic from another time. And some of the stock characters in this begin to border on, the word offensive is overused, but some of the humor in here as it relates to these other characters, it is kind of almost offensive. Well, one of them downright is, as I mentioned, the gypsy woman. Is that really, in 2022, you are really going to reduce the entire Romani people down to a gypsy woman stereotype who looks like she just got done telling Lon Chaney Jr. not to go into the woods because there's a wolf running around? Seriously? In 2022, we're doing this. Some of the stuff they do with the gay character is also a bit, I'm going to say questionable, and I know that Mario Cantone is gay, and so therefore you kind of have that, well, he is, so, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. To me, and this could just be, straight white man guilt or whatever, a lot of it felt very, very, again, old school. And they go even further with it. There is a scene that could have been funny and was for a minute, and then it got ugly, where Tom Malloy and Mario Cantone meet each other at a dry cleaner, and the dry cleaner mistakes them as a gay couple, and they kind of play it off. It's like, oh, honey, oh, and it's like, okay, that's kind of funny and cute. But then they make the store cleaner, who is Indian, I believe. Indian or Pakistani, I'm sorry, I couldn't quite tell. Like, suddenly he starts throwing all these horrible, like, slurs at them, calling them butt buddies and shit. It's like, where the fuck did that come from? And it felt like that scene was just there so Mario Cantone could, like, go off on him. It's like, what the fuck? That did not need to be there. That scene made no sense. And like I said, it's a scene that feels like it should have existed in a earlier generation, like I say, a late 90s, early 2000s romantic comedies where you'd expect to see one of those problematic type of scenes. But in 2022? Like, why was that scene in there? It didn't make any fucking sense, and it was just needlessly hateful when it started out being really cute. And all of this, I have to talk about this. This is the reason I want to talk about this movie. And I didn't realize this was going to happen until I started watching it. So this was not the reason I watched this movie. But this is the reason I am oh so glad I did watch this movie. So of all people, WWE/TNA former world heavyweight champion and Olympic gold medalist Kurt Angle has a fucking cameo in this movie. And it is the most awkward, bizarre fucking thing I have seen in a movie in a long, long time. I'm going to try to set the stage for you here, and I'm not going to tell you the punchline to this, because it's a fairly weak punchline. But, so, Briana Evigan and Tony Mallory's friend, who, is obsessed with sex, they're having lunch together. And they're talking about all the bad dates Briana Evigan has been on again, and Tom Mallory's friend is like, oh, you should meet my friend Jack. And they're trying to set up, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, apropos of nothing, in walks Kurt Angle, wearing his Olympic gold medal, because I'm sure he wears that shit around in everyday life. This movie had that thing that a lot of movies that feature wrestlers do, where they think that wrestlers actually are their character, or wear the same thing that their character wears all the time. He walks in, he glares at Briana Evigan, smiles at her like a goddamn cave troll. I cannot describe this smile that he gives her. I think they're supposed to be hinting that it's charming. It is not. It is like a serial killer. And he turns around and leaves. And they're like, oh, that was Kurt Angle. That was so weird. And they continue the conversation. He comes back in a minute later with another guy, not a wrestler, just some dude, points at in the direction of Briana Evigan and smiles again. And they're like, what the fuck is going on? And they do this like twice more. And again, every time he does it, he's smiling at her in this totally creepy fucking way. It is the most awkward goddamn cameo I have ever seen in my entire life. And it is glorious. I want so bad. I don't know how to get a hold of them. I want so bad for the OSW guys to know about this. The OSW review guys have got to find out about this, and they've got to talk about this movie. Because this cameo, and again, the joke has a payoff, but it's a fairly weak one. And it just watching this scene is so fucking surreal. It's like, what the hell is happening? I can only assume that Kurt Angle is a friend of somebody in the production. I'm going to bet Tom Malloy. And they said, hey, would you come do this with us? Like, I can only assume that's what it is. He doesn't talk in the film, in his cameo. So I get the feeling this was something that was added late. And they said, hey, my buddy Kurt Angle is available and he's willing to do this. And they're like, oh yeah, great, let's do that. But it is the most bizarre, surreal, and awkward scene I have ever seen in a movie. It's worth the price of the movie. That scene alone was worth watching the movie for. It's like, fuck, dude. So yeah, if you're a wrestling fan, definitely watch this movie just for that scene. I would also be remiss if I'm talking about this. I have to bring this up, and I'm sorry. Joyce DeWitt playing the bride's grandmother at the wedding is probably one of the worst performances I've seen all year. It was so god-awful. Like, I'm sorry, but it was repugnant. It was just... Anyway. So let's wrap this one up. I think it's hard to top the Kurt Angle cameo. So let's put a bow on this. So final grade for Asked Me to Dance. I'm gonna go a C+ on this one. It's not terrible, and Lord knows I have seen way worse this past year. And the charm and connection and charisma of our two leads, that's worth a lot to me. They are very good, and if I was ever to watch this movie again, it would be just for the two of them. And of course, that Kurt Angle scene, which earns this movie quite a few points, though not ones I think it was intending. But I can't say I didn't enjoy the movie, but I do feel that it was, while it spent a lot of time making sure our two main characters were very strong, it should have spent a little bit more time on its secondary characters and made them a little less dated and dull, and in some cases downright offensive. So that's my review of this one. If you like romantic comedies, then this one this is a nice one to kind of put in the checkbox. If you're looking for something different, it's not a bad little film, and it has its moments, but it's if you have the choice between this one and About Fate, I would recommend About Fate, with the exception of the incredibly awkward Kurt Angle cameo. That's worth the price of admission alone. So there you have it. There you go. So thank you for coming along with me. Thank you for joining me. And as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.